Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Daily Compliance News. The Daily Compliance News is an offering of the Compliance Podcast Network. March 15, 2019, the All-New York Times edition. We begin with a story about Facebook, who is losing its Chief Product Officer, Chris Cox, who was generally regarded as number 3 in the company and one of Facebook's top executives who disagreed with Mark Zuckerberg on the new direction of the company. Also leaving is the head of WhatsApp, Chris Daniels. This certainly shows a change, or rather a disagreement, in philosophy about the change in direction of Facebook. Next, the continued fallout from the college admissions scandal, and this time USC finds itself once again facing scandal. The university had nearly 36 parents named in court documents and unveiled this week on the admissions scandal, and more than half are accused of bribing their way into the elite private campus in the heart of Los Angeles. 4 USC athletic officials are charged with taking bribes, more than the number named at any other school. One of the university's top athletics administrators, Donna Hanel, helped to get more than 24 students admitted as athletes when, in fact, they were not athletes at all. Next up, William Powers has passed away. Bill Powers was the president of the University of Texas. This is not a part of the admissions scandal, but rather a part of Powers' life which came about after the Enron scandal. He was the chairman of the board of directors he was a chairman of the board committee who looked at the failure around Enron. He issued a blistering 217-page report that found a culture of deception, self-dealing, and enrichment at Enron. Controls, the report said, had failed at almost every level, and the losers were the company's shareholders to the tune of almost $60 billion. This was certainly one of the most damning reports to come out of the Enron scandal, and it served as a roadmap for both congressional and executive branch investigations, which placed the blame squarely on Kenneth Lay and Jeff Skilling, who was recently released from prison. So really a top-notch job by Bill Powers in a very difficult set of circumstances. And finally, we end with an obituary of Hal Blaine. If you don't know who Hal Blaine was, he was the ubiquitous drummer who in the 60s and 70s worked with Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, the Beach Boys, Simon and Garfunkel, and the Ronettes. He was part of the Wrecking Crew, the famous Los Angeles session musicians who recorded on most of the big hits from L.A. in that time frame. If you're a rock and roller, as I am, the name Hal Blaine may not be as familiar as some others, but he played on most of the great albums. So fire up some good 60s rock and roll and listen to Hal Blaine's drummings. I'm back from PodFest Expo 2019. I've got a lot of great new ideas around the podcast and the Compliance Podcast Network. Stay tuned for them all. This is Tom Fox. If you have any ideas for the Daily Compliance News, please feel free to email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. I'd love to hear from you. As you may know, we've had several new offerings on the Compliance Podcast Network. One of those includes Popcorn and Compliance, where Jay Rosen and I take a look at compliance through the lens of movies, both current, contemporary movies, and classic movies. Also premiering in December. And finally, Mary Shirley and Lisa Fine have premiered their new podcast, Great Women on Compliance. I hope you will check that out. It's a great podcast series. We have several other offerings that are in production that will go live hopefully in Q1 of 2019. I hope you will check back to see the offerings on this Compliance Podcast Network.